If you have all your power, 100% of your power, you should be able to do that, but we can't. And so the reason is why. And of course, the answer to that, people will think about that a bit, right? And because the answer is not that easy to, it's complicated right? And what I say to that, Atiba, is I say, one of the major answers is we don't really know ourselves that well. We think we do, but we don't.
Welcome to another episode of, guess what? Build Your Team. So if you're a business owner and you're in the place where either you're starting or you're struggling with the team that you're building and you're feeling like it's just you, we're here to tell you it's not. We struggle, we've had issues too, and we've come through. And we want to share some of those stories with you so that you know success can be yours. Now, today, I get to hang out with my friend Tom Dardick. We are going to have this conversation. Tom, welcome.
Thank you so much, Atiba. My pleasure to be with you.
Yeah, man. So now, Tom, I know you've been around since 2004, right, in business. So you've been through a lot. We've been through a few recessions and so on and so forth, and some highs as well. But I want to go back, if you could, with me, and tell us, where were you when you hired your first employee or contractor? What was going on in business, and why'd you do it? What made you take that leap?
Well, it was basically a coaching practice. My partner was a business coach and a black belt martial artist. And he noticed that the way that you would build skill in martial arts, which is take complex forms, break them down to their fundamental components, drill for skill, show the sensei you can do it, and then advance through a system. He thought that basic approach of education would apply to soft skills in the workplace. So I was helping him informally for a few years, and then we eventually made our partnership formal, started a new company, and it was the two of us. We were hiring people. We started our first hiring when we got some contracts that required more work than what the two of us could generate. So we were hiring people to help us with some admin stuff, but also to do some of the actual trainings that we had developed over the years. So that was, of course, whenever you're expanding a team, as you mentioned in your opening there, we have issues, and we were no different than anybody else. But looking back that time over 20 years ago, I don't think of it as problematic. I think of it as eye-opening.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
for sure.
I'd had businesses before that, so it wasn't my first employees I ever had. In the 90s with my father, my brother, we owned a company that had 30 employees. And so I'd been down that road a little bit, but I'll tell you, in those days, what I remember most is, remember, I was saying we were training, right? We were teaching people fundamental communication skills. And what I noticed the most was the different walk that it was when I was doing a training or my partner was doing a training versus one of our, say, younger, often female. So like a female in her 20s has a different walk through the world of work than a, male in his 40s, let's say. And so I really got to notice how the different demographics are encountered in the world. I didn't really take that into account before. So that was a big eye-opening experience. So depending on your framework, where you're coming from, people respond and react differently based on what you're putting out there.
So that's interesting. Did you in that time also even start to notice that you responded differently to them? So were you responding differently to that 20-year-old versus a 40-year-old male?
I think, I don't think it's optional. I think we respond differently to everybody that we encounter, no matter what, really. So yes to that. But what I'm really pointing to there is, when you hire somebody, you work with them day in, day out, week in, week out, you get to know them. You get to know what they're capable of. I'll use one specific. I won't use her name specifically, but let's just say it was Jessica, not a real name. But so Jessica would go out and do trainings, and people would underestimate. They wouldn't, just because she said something, they wouldn't take it. Whereas if I was doing it, if I said it, chances were good people were going to believe that it was based on science, that it was real, and they're going to, oh yeah, that makes sense. Whereas if she would say something, they'd be like, what's that from? Why should I do that? So some of it was just the gray hair credibility of like, okay, this person's been around a while.
Yeah.
Even though what she was saying might be the exact same thing that I was saying, and it was based on the same exact science and experience.
Yeah.
So it was that sort of thing. So I appreciated that. And maybe also it might not have also been just age and sex. It could also be perceived as employee versus owner, right? So if I'm a founding person that founded the company, people look at you differently than if you're an employee of that company. So
Absolutely.
it's multiple things that you notice. And when you're talking about the work we were doing, which was really peeling away onion layers to get to what's real and true, you're going through some stuff that people really have there that's, kind of crappy in some ways.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting as you bring this up because it's a refrain that I hear a lot from business owners. Okay. You experience it there in the coaching realm, but it's a very real one of, hey, nobody does it like me. The client doesn't respond to anyone else like they respond to me. And so I'm the only one who can.
Trap.
Right?
Trap. But yes. Yeah, but it's got a strong positive and a strong negative component to it.
Talk about the trap and how we deal with the trap.
Sure. So I'll start with the positive because there is a positive to our uniqueness. We all have our set of goodies that nobody else has but you in that certain combination. And our purpose and meaning is filled more when we recognize and develop those things and put them to service to other people. So it's that unique brand of each person. So I do believe that each one of us is sort of irreplaceable in that way. Having said that, nobody's irreplaceable because it's about the person's journey, not yours. So, they'll find their path. All we can ever really do is come alongside people to help shorten learning curves, maybe avoid an error here and there, limit the damage they do as they go through that learning curve, stuff like that. And the trap is one, there's number traps, first of all. But when we build ourselves up in our unique brand and our abilities, and we think of ourselves as irreplaceable, it's really easy to fall in traps of conceit. It's easy to fall in the trap of, some people use the word judgment. I don't. I use the word comparison or condemnation, where you got to be careful with the metrics you use. So sometimes we're our own harshest critics in that way, Atiba, because we'll look at somebody else and say, oh, they're so great and I'm so bad. Or, wow, I could never do what they're doing. Or, wow, look how bad they are and look how great I am. So all of those are forms of traps that you can fall in because you're using the wrong metric.
Okay. So we got to dive into that one there. Okay. I got so much stuff to go back to, but you keep leaving me on everything at the end of it. Like, oh man, no, we got to keep going there.
Okay.
Right. So let's look at the traps even further, because the first one you said was conceit, and I can feel it in my bones that you who are listening right now said, I'm not conceited. And so that didn't wash, or rather it washed right over you. Like, no, that's not me. Right. But I think we need to look at what conceit actually means, and then get into the metrics, the comparison and the condemnation, and why even we get there and how to get out of that comparison.
Okay. So a lot of what we're talking about is the paradigm and the framework, right? It's how we look at things. If we say the word conceit and you said, like, somebody could be listening, well, I'm not conceited. It's like, well, compared to what? And what is conceit really? And so we can think of almost any label or description as not one single thing, but sort of a spectrum or a wave. And so everybody has elements of almost every label, almost every description. It's very few that you're going to have zero. And when we say somebody's conceited, or we think of somebody as conceited, we're not saying they're 100 either. We're saying they're somewhere in a noticeable where it shows up a lot. Their conceit will show up in our observations. So it might be a 40 or a 50 or a 60 or a 70 on the full spectrum of what we would say the elements that comprise the word that we use, conceit.
Yeah.
And so what is that? Well, to me, when I say the word conceit, what I'm saying is I'm valuing I'm using a metric on myself, putting it on somebody else and saying mine is objectively better than theirs. So I'm saying that I am objectively, by whatever measure I think is important, better, above, more deserving, more qualified, just putting myself above on a hierarchy, another person. And it's a trap because there's truthful elements to it, right? You might be smarter. You might be more experienced. You might know more about this topic. The other person might be completely ignorant and completely wrong about something. But it's conceit when we dismiss. So actually, I go from conceit. The other word I use, the dismiss, is what I call condemnation. So again, when we're doing any of the discernment I'm pointing to, Atiba, we're using judgment. And sometimes we say the word judgment saying, oh, you shouldn't judge. And I don't think that's exactly accurate, because if you have values, if you have a hierarchy that say this is more preferable than this, then judgment is non-optional. You have to judge.
Yes.
So I use the word condemnation, which is a specific stripe of judgment that says I'm judging and I'm condemnation, meaning pushing out, sending you away, putting you lower, pushing you down. That's
Gotcha.
the objectionable piece. So what happens there, and this ties right back into the fundamentals of building a great team, it ties back into what the nature of respect is. Because you cannot have a high-functioning team if respect is not the currency of the day. And so this is a really good way, a good illustration of how we lose, how we bleed respect in the world. Because yes, you know more. Yes, you're more experienced. Yes, you're smarter. Yes, you've earned more money. Yes, you have more followers on social media. Whatever currency you want to use that has value, okay, you're ahead of the person. What I'll say is respect means, so what? In other words, you're ahead there, but where are they ahead where you're not? What do they see that you don't? Because there are things that fill in that category. And respect means that you value that difference. So you're saying, okay, this person might not have the memory power I have, or went to as good a school. So what? They did stuff you did not do. They have attributes you do not have. They've had experience you've never had. And they can see things and contribute to you if you have an open heart and mind to hear that. And that's what respect is. It's showing the value of another person that is a different walk than yours. And throw away the metric, throw away the meter, throw away the thing that you think puts you above, and just be there with the person, a soul to soul, another human being that has every bit of value in, however way you want to look at it from a master viewpoint. Most people will say in God's eyes, but the reality is they know things you don't. So I don't care how you want to look at it. That's the better way. And if you want to build a team, that's the better attitude.
Absolutely. I love that. You can't have a high functioning team if respect is not the currency of the day. Tom Dardick quoted. And respect and valuing the difference. So let's look at this on a slightly, because respect is huge. Okay. And I'm so glad that you went there, because man, this is so thank you, Tom. Because here's the thing. There are so many of us, and you've seen it as for business owners, we hire people who are dumber than us. Right? And we get into we have to be the smartest in the room syndrome.
Another trap.
Okay. Right?
Yep.
Then there's the other side of we hire people who are smarter than us, but we're such control freaks that we hold tight and don't allow them to shine and be, right? And then there's this idea, what you were talking about of, hey, actually respect them and respect the difference. There isn't a measure here. Realize that they've got value that they can add to you. Because there's so many of us who think that it's our job to only add value to the employee, right? Because we're greater.
Yep.
So how can you tell which one of those you are today?
Phew. I thought you were going to ask a different question. So because what I was thinking is because how can you tell? Let's look at what the role of the leader is. Let's take a little bit of a different tack at that, because I think it'll answer that question, Atiba.
Yeah.
What is the role of the leader? Well, you see a place that we're not, like we are where we are, right? The day is the day. And if we have a shared mission, that implies that we're trying to do something, we're trying to get from place A to place B. So we're moving somewhere. And if we have people, that means we're doing it together. It's a shared mission. So the job of the leader is to describe that mission so that people can be aligned in what they view as the mission. So if using a boat analogy, we're all rowing in the same direction and ultimately at the same cadence so that we work together better. So what does that mean then? That means that the leader has to set the standards of what's okay and what's not, what's in bounds, what's not. And here's what I always say when I'm talking to leaders. I always say, you have two choices, because and that path from A to B also is one of growth. Why? Because the world is always changing, and whatever you think today is not going to be the same as tomorrow. So you have to be on a discovery journey, not just a journey, but a discovery journey, which implies learning, which implies change, which implies I am going to be different tomorrow than I am today. So what I say is two things. I say, tomorrow we're going to be better than we are today. So in other words, that is a call in that alignment process. That's a call to growth and learning for everybody on the boat.
Yes.
So that's one thing. The other thing is that requires something of the leader. That requires a setting of standards. And that means, what I say is, you have to change your people, or you have to change your people. So this goes to what you were pointing to. Change your people in one means you call for a higher standard. You help them make the cognitive and skill leaps in order to be different tomorrow and be on that discovery path. Some will, some won't. So that standards means that you give them the chance, but you can't control them. They're in charge of them, right? So that's kind of what you were pointing to there is the leader cannot control. All you can do is invite and support. You can encourage, you can love, you can respect and lean into them and build their confidence and give them the resources to be successful. That's what you can do. What you can't do is move each foot. You can't make them drop the bad habits and apply good habits. That's up to them, and there's nothing you can do about that. That's always up to them. So that's when you have to set the standard and say, okay, I'm trying to change my people, but if some won't, some will, some won't, then I have to change my people. That means I have to either put them in a different role, or perhaps they have to find a different boat. But that's the hard work of it. So I think that's a backdoor way of answering that question.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And so in that changing of your people, as a leader, how much responsibility do you have to change?
I think you have as much responsibility as everybody else. In other words, because, well, it depends on how serious you are about your mission. Is it really, that's the real answer. Because if you're super serious, if you are dedicated to that mission and nothing's gonna pull you off of that, you will make the changes.
Yeah.
But see, most people are just like we talked about Conceit, that being that scale of 0 to 100. that seriousness of mission is also a scale, right? So you might be 20 on the scale of seriousness. You might not be 60. Now that's a measure that's worth paying attention to, because if you're not at 100, why? Why aren't you at 100? And a lot of people say, well, no, I'm at 100. And to that, I'm going to say, well, you got a blind spot then, because you're probably not at 100. And I'm not saying you should even be at 100, honestly,
Right.
Because there's more than one mission in the world, right? There's more than one thing that matters. So if you're at 100, you actually might be out of kilter and not being as powerful as you possibly could be. So it's 0 to 100 is not better or worse. We're talking about alignment here. So to more directly answer your question there, you need to make sure people are at a compatible level of alignment and seriousness, and challenge yourself and others. You can't challenge somebody else to any greater degree than you challenge yourself, right? Mm-hmm. People see right through it. And so your effectiveness as a leader is only going to be that level. I use the word seriousness. You could use the word commitment. You could use the word responsible. You could use the word dedicated. You could use the word servant. There's all kinds of words we could use and ideas we could use to paint this picture, Atiba. But it's basically the energy. It's all energy. So it's how you're directing the energy and towards what. And then that implies values.
Okay. So I hope y'all are picking up what Tom is putting down here. Okay. Because he's giving you a beautiful blueprint of, number one, understanding how committed you are to the thing that you're building. Right? Which then also speaks to how committed you are to the growth and the change, like he said earlier, about being better today than you were yesterday. Right? And so it starts there, because then you can't hold anyone else to standard that you're not willing to hold yourself, which then speaks directly to your values and the things that you value. And so Tom, one of the things we talk about here on the show very often is hiring for fit first before skill, right? And hiring people who share the same values as you, because then they will be able to come on and merge with you and be able to be in alignment with you. Otherwise, you're screwed. You're going in two totally different directions.
Yeah, that's wise, because the skills, the ability to do tasks, that's fungible. That's easy. Those are easy to pick up, relatively speaking. What you're pointing to, Atiba, those are hard fought and won over time. Some of it is disposition. Some of it is, hey, it's baked into sometimes it's the genetics or the experiences of our environment. Whatever it is, those are slow to evolve and change. And in the world of commerce, or in the world of shared missions, we've got a job to do, and it's pressing. We don't have a lot of time to dedicate to wide adjustments of values and attitudes. Yeah. So your missive there, I think, is very wise. Part of my practice up to the founding of the Eye of Power as a business was people strategy. So I spent a lot of time using the tips and tools and tricks to try to get the right seats in the right bus, on the the right seats on right people in the right seats on the right bus. And that's a heck of a job. And I'm going to say in most organizations, it's undertended. Because, and for the very reason you're pointing to.
Yes. Okay, I was going to write down my next question for you, but I don't need to anymore. I'm just going to ask you. So that brought an interesting question to mind, what you just said. Okay, so many of us have heard the bus analogy, and your bus has seats, and you want to get the right people in the right seats on the right bus in order for the bus to go the direction that you want it to go. right? The bus being the metaphor for your business. What about those times when you find the right person? So let's say you're hiring for a position. Someone applies, you interview them. You find the right person, but you don't have a seat yet for them.
Hmm.
Okay. What do you do then?
Well, obviously that's a depends. There's a lot of variables in that thought, but as a general broad philosophical thing, what I have seen to be the most valuable policy is if you find a gem of a person. In other words, when we say a gem of a person, it could be the alignment of values, could be capacities, it could be that level of seriousness about how they go. Anything the word I use is I tend to use superstar.
Mm-hmm.
And superstars are not comfortable. When you add a superstar to a team, it's not comfortable. So oftentimes people will pass on superstars.
Yeah.
And that's a big detriment to the health of an organization, because it's a competitive landscape in most situations. And just like I like to use the sport of basketball as an analogy there, because it's the most evident, because there's only 5 people on the court at any one time. So if you have one superstar and the other team doesn't, the difference in advantage for the team that has a superstar is so apparent, right?
Right.
In the NBA today, you pretty much have to have 3 superstars or more, or you're not going to do well.
You're not going to survive. Yeah.
Right. So I think it's same things true in all pursuits that are competitive. You need kind of your share or more of superstars. So for that reason, pass on a superstar at your peril is really my answer to that.
I want you to say that statement again.
Pass on a superstar at your own peril.
Yes. I got to write that down. Sorry, y'all. Y'all going to have to watch me write. I totally agree with you. And it's a question that comes up in masterminds. It's a question that comes up between business owners all the time. And like you said, there are lots of variables. And I'm not going to ignore the variables, like how the heck do you pay them? What the heck are they going to do? So on and so forth. But every single time we have hired a superstar that we weren't ready for, they advanced the ball more and in ways that we could not have imagined.
That is a perfect point, because they're breaking your paradigm, right?
Yes.
You think your business is this thing, right?
Yes.
You bring somebody in who's a superstar, they're breaking those barriers out. And now it's something actually in this case more than it otherwise ever would have been. And, I have it's a small scale, but I just started a new company around my power model. And I brought in my brother, who happened to be retiring from his long career as a IT executive, really a software development for a large company. Mm-hmm. And I've worked as a consultant with large companies, but I've never worked as an employee for large companies. And so he is bringing a mentality and bringing some other players to the team that have worked at scales that I have not personally worked at. And already I can see the paradigm is way different. Just in 2 months, it's way, way different paradigm as to what our company is going to look like and be, because of that. I'll call it a superstar. I might be biased because it's my brother, but he also happens to be one of my favorite people I've ever met in my entire life.
Yeah.
So I know there's bias there, and bias is a problem. Bias is definitely a problem in the world. But having said that, I still try to control for that best I can. And I'll still hold that as an example of having a superstar and watching the boundaries expand as a result.
So bias aside, there's something else really important in there too, because I'm making a general assumption that this new company is not a software development company.
No, it's not.
Right. And so, this is one of the other paradigm shifts and places of hiring a superstar, right? So often when we're looking for a position, we're looking for someone who fits and has done what it is that we want them to do, versus looking for, okay, yes, they fit and they have transferable skills into what we do. Okay. It might be great that they did what we wanted them to do. But I remember a few years ago, I hired a production manager who was managing all the production of all of our videos. And this young lady fit us, and she had the skills. Her background was construction management, building skyscrapers.
Wow.
Right? Yeah, she knew nothing about video. Okay. She was clueless about video, but her ability to understand how an entire project comes together and all the different pieces and those transferable skills seamlessly came over, and she was able to help revamp our systems. And I think that's what you're experiencing too with your brother.
Well, I'll tell you, it's another example. I mean, you really reminded me of this, because when I brought Greg on, it was as, so, hey, there's only three of us. So he was CTO, right? Chief Technical Officer. And I was respecting his skills in that arena, the technical arena, which is not my strong suit. So I was super, super happy to have him come in and be able to contribute in that way. But I did not even know his actual superpower, because his actual superpower is building technical teams that function at a high level. And so it's actually his people understanding, not the technical thing, that is really what he brings to the table. I didn't know that, or I underappreciated it until we started having shared experiences with, in the world of work, where I could see him at work, and I'm just beaming with pride and seeing what what his dimensions are there. And, because the eye of power is a developmental, right? You're walking through a protocol that's helping people see eye of power, see your power, see your agency. Mm-hmm. So it's a methodology to help people continually move in the direction of a more fully expressed version of themselves. Mm-hmm. So as I was envisioning how this was going to work at scale, I'm thinking I need, guides and coaches. That part of it is teaching people to do that work too. People function as a guide, but I was thinking I need guides and coaches. I didn't realize that Greg would be a fantastic resource in that dimension too. And so it's the same kind of thing that, the skyscrapers, with the videos, it's like the technical, but it's really the people, and it's always the people. I should have known better in retrospect, because it's always if you're successful, it's always the people.
Always the people.
It's
absolutely.
Always. Yeah.
Absolutely. So Tom, once again, thank you for a fantastic transition. You set me up all day. This has been great. Like, we scripted this, which we didn't, y'all. This is just us chatting. But tell us. So you've mentioned Eye of Power a couple of times, right? Tell us, who do you serve? What do you do for them? And how can people get in contact with you?
Well, like I said, it just started this year. So I built this model out. The Eye of Power is a model that, it's a way for us. The model serves as a tool. It's a multi-tool. It serves in three ways. It serves as a flashlight, it serves as a map, and it serves as a compass, the kind of compass that you orient with. To do what? I always ask people, have you ever made a New Year's resolution and then not kept it? Mm. And of course, most people can relate to that. Maybe not a New Year's, but something that they wanted to do and they didn't follow through with. And then the question I ask to that is, why? Why can't you just, and I'm not excluding myself. I think almost all of us fall in this bucket. Why can't we just decide to do something and then do it? Because you would think about it. If you have all your power, 100% of your power, you should be able to do that. But we can't. And so the reason is why. And of course, the answer to that, people will think about that a bit, right? And because the answer is not that easy to, it's complicated is right. And when I say to that, Atiba, as I say, one of the major answers is we don't really know ourselves that well. We think we do, but we don't. And I use the iceberg as an analogy there, right? We see the iceberg, we think we see the iceberg and understand it. You live on that iceberg, you think you understand everything, and you don't realize under the surface of the water is 90% of the iceberg. Well, our cognitive brain, the front part of our brain, that's our language and the way that we think about ideas, That's not a super powerful tool as it relates to understanding all of reality. It
Hmm.
understands our reality that we navigate through, but that's a very small fraction of the full spectrum of what the universe and world is, right? We see a
Hmm.
small sample of the electromagnetic spectrum, right? See and hear a small sample of that. Our years are short. Our days are short. Our ability to understand or remember things is not comprehensive compared to even the most powerful AI models, right? They can take 10,000 things into account in a microsecond, and we're still on thing number one,
Right.
right? So we have all these limitations, and that's why. So the map, the compass, the flashlight helps us navigate that portion that's under the water. But there's a problem. There's a big problem, because just knowing the answer and just seeing it doesn't help us. It's because we are not moved by intellectual and rational reasons. We humans make changes for emotional reasons. So for that reason, if you're just learning from a book, if you're just, you know, going to a webinar, it might make a little bit of a marginal difference for a little bit, possibly, but you'll return to baseline sooner or later. And everybody kind of leaders know this, right? You're constantly frustrated. We've been investing tons of money in training and webinars
Yep.
forever, and yet I can't really see that much of a difference, right?
You're right.
And that's because we're trying to use the wrong tool for the job. Is because people are moved by emotion. And what are we emotional about? We're social creatures. We're emotional about relationship. So I know this is a long answer, but it's the real answer to what I'm trying to do, which is connect people in relationship in ways that inspire them to move in a healthy direction, in a positive direction, in a place where there's more respect, more trust, more fully expressed version of themselves, where they feel like it's okay to make a mistake, where it feels like it's okay to show who I really am, where it
Right.
feels like, it's not transactional. It's more just accepting of the full person. Those sorts of table stakes that allow us to operate at a truly full, at highest levels. And this is going to be required more and more as time goes on, because of technology, the way AI is coming in, remote work, all these factors are changing the nature of the workforce. So it's not going to even be optional anymore, Atiba. Leaders are going to have to figure this out. And
Yep.
I think I have a system that can help their journey a lot better.
That's awesome. So, if someone is hearing us and it's like, yes, how do they reach you?
iofpower.com. Eye of power. I, our actual eye of seeing our power. And I don't mean power over other people. I mean agency. I mean the ability to
Yes.
control what we can control and not waste energy on the things we can't control, which is other people.
Wonderful. So that's eyeofpower.com. And we will link that in the show notes on YouTube. It will be in the description as well. Listen, everybody, go check out Tom. If you couldn't tell from our conversation, like, he's a guy who actually understands. And there was something that I saw, and I want to share this here. Tom is a student of the human condition. And I love that quote. And I love that statement, because that's what we've experienced today. As you listened to Tom today, you heard someone who's been studying the human condition and has an understanding to help you understand and unlock that power that's inside of you. The Eye of Power. So check him out, eyeofpower.com. Tom, thank you so much for being here today. It's not that I'm surprised at all, but it's been a great conversation, my friend.
Thank you, Atiba. I loved it. Thank you so much. I appreciate you so much.
You're welcome, buddy. All right, everybody. We'll see y'all soon. And don't forget, go check out Tom, eyeofpower.com. Bye-bye.